Alrighty guys, so we finally made it to our adjustment videos. So we've done the consult. After the consult, they decided to start with us. Yay! And then after the start appointment, we basically do the same thing for the bond lowers appointment, except for the fact that in the bond lowers appointment, we don't need initial records. We already have initial records. But after they have their upper and lower braces on, at that point, we're gonna start our adjustments to make sure that the teeth are aligning and all that. All right, so I'm just gonna do a simple adjustments, and I just want you guys to see the technique behind the adjustments, okay? So this is a mirror, this is an explorer, this is a cotton plier, this is a math owl, this is a wine guard, this is a ligature cutter, and this is a distal end cutter. So mirror, explorer, cotton pliers, math owl, wine guard, ligature cutter, distal end cutter. And I just want you to know all these instruments. This is a basic setup for orthodontics, okay? So the explorer, we use it for many things, including taking off ties. So notice, and these are clear brackets, so I'm happy that you guys are getting to see this. We're gonna take off these elastics. Notice that I have my fulcrum. So in the patient's mouth, you're always gonna have a fulcrum. And you literally just grab the elastic from where it's easiest, and you literally just remove it from the 4 hooks. So the objective is to remove the elastics from the 4 hooks. And if you guys gotta get closer, you can. You see, right here. And you see, the reason that you have a fulcrum is because if the explorer slips on this side or slips on this side, you're protecting the patient. So safety first, right? So notice how I'm doing this, okay? With my fulcrum, I literally, and it's gonna be easier in the patient's mouth because right now I have to hold this actual typodon. Obviously the patient holds its own mouth. So it's gonna be a lot easier and go a lot faster on the actual patient's mouth. But basically, the objective for untying a patient is to remove all the elastics from all 4 of the hooks of every bracket. We want to untie the patient. We want to untie the patient before the doctor comes and sees the patient. In this office, we untie the patient first, and then the doctor comes and sees it. And obviously, these ties are very old. These clear ones on this end. But basically, that's what we do, okay? So the objective is to untie the patient. Now my glove is broken. Guys, it's not gonna be like this whenever it's on a patient, I promise, okay? So untie the patient with your fulcrum and keep your fulcrum. And again, these clear ones have just been on the model for a long time. Just focus on how I did it with the purple ones, okay? All right, moving on. So now we're going to remove this wire. Let's say that this is a start patient and this patient has been in this wire for 6 weeks. And look, the teeth are starting to align real well. So this was a 14 9 tie, and now we're ready to move up in wire and we're ready to go to a 16 9 tie. So this is an untied patient. The doctor's gonna come by. We will have our pen ready to take our note. And the doctor's gonna say, all right, looking good, progressing well. It's time to move to the next wire. So I think we're gonna go with an upper 16 9 tie on the top, and we're gonna go with a lower 16 9 tie on the bottom. We are going to see them back in 4 to 6 weeks for another adjustment. These are all the things that you wanna write down. Everything that the doctor says, you wanna make sure you write it down so that you don't forget, and so that after you're done with the adjustment, you can cross-reference with your notes to make sure that everything was done properly before the patient leaves the office. So now I'm gonna go and get my new wires, and I'll be right back. So I got my wire for my upper arch, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna place it in. So the first things first is I look at the patient's mouth, and I think, this patient's mouth is about a medium size. So I can cut it probably to about here, right here. And it will be long enough to go all the way to the back, to the 7 bracket, because look, they have the 7 brackets, but at the same time not poke them and make them uncomfortable. Another way you can size your wire is by taking the old wire and just sizing it like this and saying, okay, I'm gonna leave a little bit of length on it just to give myself some room in case there has been any changes in the mouth. But I can put them together and I kind of put 1 or 2 millimeters above the last wire. If you cut it to the last wire, you run the risk of it not being long enough, or being too short. Okay, that's why I always cut 1 millimeter into it. Now I'm gonna put my wire in, and what I'll do is I literally start with putting it inside the tube, the 6 tube here, and then I take the other end and I put it inside the 6 tube here. At this point, it looks like this. All right. Then I grab my handy dandy Weingart, my favorite instrument. This is my best friend in ortho. And I, inside the mouth, notice inside the mouth, you're gonna be like this because the cheek is right here. And I literally grab it and I just guide it into the 7 bracket. And then once I guide it into the 7 bracket, at that point, I go on the other side and do the same thing and guide it into the 7 bracket. Guide it into the 7 bracket. And remember, it's gonna be easier inside the patient's mouth because you don't have to actually hold the Typodon. I would literally be using 2 hands for this. And then after it's in both, I gently guide it until my dot is centered. So notice here, the dot is now centered right in the middle. Typically, from the companies that we use here in Florida, our companies have 3 dots on the top and 1 dot on the bottom for the bottom wire. So this specific wire I'm using is one of our older wires. But typically, for staff that works here, we would have 3 dots, and you're gonna do that center dot right in between the centrals so that the wire is centered. It's important for the wire to be centered, okay? And it's important for the patient to be comfortable the entire time. Now notice, the wire only extends that millimeter that I cut it right above. If the wire were to have been left long, it would be now poking the patient's cheek, and the patient would be in pain and uncomfortable. It's important that throughout this adjustment process, the patient stays comfortable, of course, because we don't want the patient to be in pain and we want the patient to be comfortable, right? So very important. Now that my wire is centered, right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get my color and I'm gonna start the adjustment. So you grab your math towel and you literally get the color in on one end, and at that point you can use your fulcrum just like usual and you can put the color around the bracket. So that's how it goes around the bracket. You just want it to be in all 4 of the hooks. So notice, grab the color and fulcrum, and holding it like a pencil or how you hold a pencil, you would literally just put it around 1, 2, 3, and 4 hooks. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's keep it moving here. And notice how I'm using my thumb to guide it. Sorry, those are also old colors. I'm sorry guys, I'm just over here trying to save resources here. Let's go get another pink. Get another pink, all right. And notice how I'm also using my thumb to guide it in. A lot of times I will use my thumb to guide it in my fulcrum, and I will guide it in with my thumb. Yeah, these colors are better because they're newer. So does anyone have any questions about this? No? All right, perfect. And then I guide it in. You see how I guide it in with my thumb? Use your hands. Use your hands. Use both hands. Use whatever you got to do to be dexterous in this process, and do what you got to do and what you need to do to facilitate this process. At this point, we put our 16 nai tie in. We put all of our colors, and now we just need to lastly make the patient comfortable before she leaves, and we're going to cut the wire in the back. So this is our distal end cutter. This is what we cut the wires with. And the distal end cutter is special because it actually holds the wire, the excess wire in here, so it's not wandering around in the mouth, okay? We're gonna come all the way to the back, and we're gonna cut flush behind the back of the bracket. We're gonna clip the wire right there. Now, if you actually are on the bracket and you press down to clip, it will break the bracket. If you're not flush behind the bracket, let's say you clip it like this and you're not flush behind the bracket, it will leave excess wire. The patient will be uncomfortable and it will poke them. Very important that you cut flush behind the bracket. How do you know that you're flush behind the bracket? Is when the back of the bracket is touching this side of the distal end cutter. And you can feel the back of the bracket. You can feel it with this side of the distal end cutter. That's how you know that you're flush behind the bracket. So we're gonna go behind the bracket. I feel the back of the bracket, but I'm not on the bracket. And I clip and grab it and hold it. Happy patient. No excess wire. We're gonna do the same thing on this side. This side has a little bit more wire. We're gonna clip flush behind the bracket, right there, and we're going to snap it. Okay, and no excess wire. And you can even feel it, no excess wire, happy patient. All right. All right, so we finally made it to our adjustment portion. So we're just gonna go over a few things. Obviously, we already know the first two. This is a mirror and explorer. This is a mathau, a wine guard, a ligature cutter, a distal end cutter, and the cotton pliers. The mirror is obviously to see intraorally. So if you're trying to check the occlusal surface of the upper arch, it's always going to be easier to check it with a reflection, and that's what the mirror is for. Of course, the explorer, for orthodontics purposes, removes the ligature ties and guides and directs. It's just a great tool. The mathau, of course, puts the ligature ties on the O-rings, the colors, and basically everything else. Stainless steel ties, power chains, very important. Another good director is a wine guard, and it's heavy duty. So whereas an explorer is a good director, but at the same time, if you want a good grip, you have a wine guard. Wine guard, I believe, will be your favorite instrument in ortho. It's mine. Then we have the ligature cutter, which basically does exactly what it says. It cuts ligatures. It cuts the power chain, extra links. It cuts anything that needs to be cut, the braid off of the stainless steel tie. So it's a really good instrument as well. It's very needed. We got the distal end cutter, which cuts the wire at the back of the bracket. And remember, cut the wire flush to the back of the bracket. All right. Then we have the cotton pliers, which are a handy dandy tool to grab things. And it grabs things, and it's nice because the things remain sterile, right? Everything that you touch with your dirty gloves is immediately not sterile and needs to be sterilized. So the cotton pliers is good. For example, if we need to go inside of a drawer while we're actually in treatment, we could literally open the drawer, grab a cotton, and close the drawer, or close the drawer even with the actual cotton plier, and everything stayed sterile, right? So, see? And close. Literally, so the cotton pliers are amazing, all right? And this is a basic setup for an orthodontic appointment. So this is a basic setup. These are basically the tools that you will need for most every orthodontic appointment. Now, these are the types of wires that we use. We have our 14 night tie, 16 night tie, 18 night tie, 16, 22 night tie. Then we have stainless steels, 18 stainless steels, 16, 22 stainless steels. And we have some more that we use in another cabinet. But basically the two types of materials that we use are night tie or nickel titanium and stainless steel. Which we shorten as SS, all right? These are the materials. So these are the two types of materials that we use. Now the types of wires that we use are round, rectangular, and reverse curve. Yes, there are night tie rounds, night tie rectangulars, and night tie reverse curves. Differentiating between a round and a rectangular is easy because it's based on the circumference or the, how do you say it? Yeah, the circumference on a round and the length, height, and width on a rectangular. So for example, for a round, we use 0.14, 0.16, and 0.18. Now when there's more sizes to a round wire. Sometimes we even use 12s if they're very, very crowded. But when we jump after the 0.18, we in this office jump to rectangular. So rectangular could be 16.22, which means obviously one side is 16 and the other end is 22. We could use a 17.25 or we could use 18.25, all the way up to 19.25 we have in this office, and that automatically is rectangular. These are the size of the wire. Another type of wire that we use is a reverse curve wire, and a reverse curve wire is really awesome. It opens up a bite, just like opens it up a little bit. So for example, if the top teeth sit like this and the bottom teeth sit like this, the reverse curve wire actually brings those teeth forward so that this patient could have a normal class 1 bite. So it's really, really nice to see that process happen with a reverse curve wire. And again, with a reverse curve wire in this office, we use 0.18s, we use 16.22s, which is a round reverse curve, and we use rectangular reverse curves. So we can use up to 17.25 all the way up to an 18.25 with the reverse curve, okay? So it's getting kind of jumbled up in here, so let's just show you. You know me, I'm not a teacher, guys. All right, so let's go ahead and put on this reverse curve wire. I've showed you guys, or on the other videos, you're gonna see how we usually do rounds. So let's go ahead and do this reverse curve. When placing a reverse curve wire, it's very important to make sure that the curve is headed toward the gingiva. So for example, in this lower arch, we are going to put the reverse curve with the curve facing the gingiva. So the curve is going towards the gingiva. If you were doing the upper, it would literally be like this, and the curve would be moving up towards the gingiva. So remember, the curve is pointing towards the gingiva. If you do it the opposite way on the arch, it's gonna have the opposite effect. See, a reverse curve wire, and what it does is if the top teeth are like this and the bottom teeth are like this and they're hitting like this, you've seen probably, I'm sure, teeth curved in like this and not quite a good bite. The reverse curve actually brings those teeth forward so that the patient can have a good, nice class 1 bite. So it's important that you do it the right way though, because we don't want it to get more curved in or have the opposite effect. So the reverse curved wire, when we place it, make sure the curved wire points towards the gingiva. The curve goes towards the gingiva, okay? And just remember that. Now I'm gonna pre-size this wire. It looks like this patient has a pretty medium to large size mouth, probably only cut a little smidge off of the ends to make sure that the patient has a good experience in this adjustment. We never want to leave the wire too long, even when placing it in, because it could cut the back of their cheek. Now my wire is faced towards the gingiva. I'm going to grab my wine guard and I'm going to grab the end of the reverse curve wire, and I'm literally going to ease it into the mouth and place it inside the 6th tube. Now notice with this specific wire, I do it this way and put it at the end. Because it's curved, it won't go straight in, as you can see. So on the other end, then I would grab the tip of the wire on the other end as well, and I would literally place it inside of the 6th as well. Now the wire is on both of the 6s. I'm gonna grab the wire with my wine guard and I'm slowly going to guide it in just a tad bit more. Remember, this patient does have 7s, so I'm literally guiding it into each tube before I actually fully engage the wire into the brackets. All right. And now it's in both of my 7s and my 6s on both sides. And at this point, I can center the wire and engage it to the brackets. So I'm literally centering the wire and engaging it to the brackets, and I could feel the pressure as I'm putting it in, okay? And now it looks like this, like if it was a regular wire, but it's really a reverse curved wire. And I'm going to put my colors on.